Chairman. Thank you very much for holding this hearing. The Stanford case, as you pointed out, represents a major failure by the Securities and Exchange Commission in carrying out its investor protection mandate. Investors, as you pointed out, were defrauded of billions of dollars, and thousands of victims have had their lives shattered as a result. One of those victims from my home state of Alabama, Craig Nelson, testified at last August's field hearing on the Stanford case that you referenced, Senator Vitter presided over. We now know that Alan Stanford openly flaunted the money that he stole from his victims. He used it to buy part of a Caribbean island, to bribe foreign securities regulators, and fund sporting events. His victims deserve to know how this could have happened, hence this hearing. Last October, Senator Vitter and I sent a letter to the Inspector General of the SEC asking him to supplement the limited review that had been conducted of the SEC's record in the Stanford matter. We asked him to look into, among other things, the history of the SEC's oversight of Stanford. What we learned was extremely disturbing. The IG's findings, which we will get into later here today, indicate that the SEC produced reports, as Senator Dodd pointed out, in 97, 98, 2002, and 2004 that determined that fraud was occurring at Stanford. Further, the IG found that enforcement action was not taken following the findings, even though the examination staff repeatedly requested that the enforcement staff pursue such action at the SEC. Finally, the Inspector General found that a particular member of the enforcement staff involved in making the determination not to pursue enforcement action later sought employment with Stanford. Ultimately, it was not until after the Madoff Ponzi scheme was uncovered that any action was taken in the Stanford case, despite all these warnings. In the end, SEC inaction allowed the fraud to grow larger and swallow the life savings of numerous additional victims. I believe that the SEC's gross negligence with respect to the handling of the Stanford case involves even more significant failures than were present in the Madoff fraud in some ways. In contrast to Madoff, where the SEC's examiners did not find the fraud, in the Stanford case, give them credit, the SEC's examiners were not only aware of the fraud, they prevailed upon the enforcement division in the SEC to take action, and they refused. The findings of the SEC gross negligence in the IG's report are not the only troubling aspect of the SEC's conduct in the Stanford case. The Securities and Exchange Commission chose to release the report in the height of congressional action on regulatory reform and on the very same day that it announced its decision to pursue charges against Goldman Sachs. Think about it. In many ways, it appears that the timing of the release was intended to draw the least amount of scrutiny to the SEC for their failures. Today, we will hear from the SEC Inspector General, the heads of the SEC's examination and enforcement programs, and the head of the Fort Worth office. I believe that this should mark just the beginning of our review of this troublesome episode. We need to know exactly why evidence of fraud was not more thoroughly pursued. We need to know who was involved in reviewing this evidence and why they failed to connect the dots. Moreover, we need to examine the Commission's general response to these findings so that we can be sure that corrective measures are being taken to prevent a repeat of these institutional failures. Otherwise, we'll go down the road again. But Senator Dodd, I appreciate again you holding this hearing and look forward to the Inspector General.
Thank you, Senator.